Hey, welcome to another special edition of the Real Deal podcast. Let's get it. All right, welcome to another great episode of the Real Deal podcast, episode 166. I'm your host, as always, Courtney Harden. This is a special edition. I got podcasts almost every other day, so I got a great guest coming up. So she's waiting in the wings. Not gonna keep her too much longer, but you can find the podcast on all social media podcast platforms, whether you have Apple, Spotify. We're on the BS3 network. We're on Roku. It's the BS3TVLive.com Roku channel. You can find it there. Again, you can follow me on all the social media platforms, whether it's Twitter or X, whatever you want to call it these days. Facebook, Instagram. You can follow at Get the Real Deal and on the podcast, like I said, on the social media platforms there. Haven't did Blue Sky yet, but I'm thinking about that transition into there as well. Just more platforms to promote the podcast. We're on Spreaker, iHeartRadio, all like I said, all the podcasts, wherever you get podcasts there as well. So I am, like I said, I'm not gonna keep my guest any longer in the wings. She is this woman is very talented. You should hear her resume. So I'm gonna break it down. Manager of Golf Canada. She's also a pro PGA of Canada, pro golfer as well. Founder of Black Women Golfers, which I think is very important. We're gonna get into her journey, her story as well. And I found her on Instagram on another podcast. So welcome to the show, Amaya Athill. Thank you for coming on. Really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me. I'm so happy to be here. What an intro. The music was banging. The vibes are great. Come
Yeah,
on. Come
yes,
on.
thank you. Yes, yes. I try to keep it, keep this podcast, like you said, as with the banging beat, the intro, and then I bring my guest in. So, but now since you're going to be on, I'm thinking you're going to be on more than once before, so you're going to be podcast family. So, not a guest. So, but I appreciate your time. Thank you for tuning. Thank you for coming. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
For sure, for sure. So, how are you doing first and foremost before we start into the questions and things like that, conversation? Because I think it's going to be a great conversation. But how are you doing, and how's your December's going so far? And you're in Canada too, so I've got to say that first and foremost. But how's everything going?
Everything is great. I had a wonderful year. So I'm
Mhm.
just ending off a fantastic, busy, hectic, crazy year of all
Yeah.
good things. And because I'm in Canada, it's cold. So I'm a little cold,
Mm. Yeah.
which wasn't the case most of the year. I have to say it was very unseasonably
Yeah.
warm all the way up till November. But now the cold is kicking in. I think we're minus something and we're expecting a snowstorm tomorrow.
Ooh,
So, you
jeez.
know, Canada
Ooh.
is Canadaing.
Yeah, Canada's yes, Canada's Canada. Yes, it's doing the Canadian thing. That's what it's doing.
Exactly.
Oh my goodness, yeah, it's cold here too in Philly, and it's interesting because we had 70s last week, which is
Oof.
rare in November. 70s in
Yeah.
here and on the east coast of the United States, but we've been enjoying the 60s and 70s, and then it would drop to like the 30s. But that's
Ooh.
like you said, that's being Philadelphia. It's Philadelphian. That's what it's doing. East Coast weather. So now we've been having the 30s and 40s this week, which is winter is here early.
Yeah,
So
it feels like it. I'm kinda
mhm.
like, "Wait, where did you come from?" Because
Yeah, right. Yeah.
originally, it
Yes.
was so bright and sunny on an unseasonably so, and I'm like, "Wait, what happened?
What
Who
is
flipped
this?
the
Yeah.
switch?"
Like, what's the switch? Like, can you at least give us a warning? But no, I guess God's like, no, we're gonna
We're gonna
put
get cold
if
now.
it's cold now. I'd rather it be if it's gonna get cold, be cold.
Yeah.
So not
Don't kinda be midway. Don't give
yes,
me these, like, middle of the road jackets. Give me
mhm,
my full winter garb or
yeah,
nothing.
yeah, exactly. Because I mean, we had, like you said, right, and it's like, okay, now it's 30s and 40s, so I got the winter coat and the Scully and all that, the gloves yesterday, and it's supposed to be like this for this week. But then, like, I think the weekend's supposed to be in the 50s, so it's like, here we
So
go.
you call your, beanies, Scullies. In
Scully's.
Canada, they call them toques. It's something I learned recently.
Okay. Okay.
They
I think
call those beanie hats toques. So
yep.
if you ever got into a pub quiz where you're asked random questions, you now know the word toque.
Toque. Okay. So Toque. So yeah. So Toque is it. So Scully's, Toques, beanies,
Yeah,
skull caps. I mean, it's the list goes on and on. I mean,
I
winter
love it.
hats. So yeah. So all the above. So, but I'm glad everything's going well for you in this.
Thank
And I
you.
seen you've been doing a
Thank you for
recap.
asking.
Yeah, for sure. And I seen you've been doing a recap of your year and
Mm,
everything too. So before we get into all of that in the year of 2024, let's talk about who Amaya Athill is. So the floor is yours. Tell us your journey, how you got into golf. And I kind of know a little bit of your story doing your research, but I'm gonna let you tell it. So this is your story, your journey. So you go as long as you want to. So tell us who Amaya is, how you got into golf, and so any other thing you want to share.
Sure, you can. If you're giving me the floor, be careful. You're gonna have to stop me because I am a rambler.
Okay.
Um, so my name is Amaya Athill, and I was born and raised in Antigua, which is a very small island in the heart of the English-speaking Caribbean. My parents are both from there. My dad was originally born in the UK, but his background is Antiguan, so he moved back when he was 10.
Hmm.
And my parents were the last children. I think my dad had 14 brothers and sisters. My mom had 12. So they were the
Wow.
almost the last kids in a line of children. So
Yeah.
they grew up with not much. So when I was 5, my dad at the time was an entrepreneur. They never went to university. My dad decided to open a business, and he had a mentor at the time who played golf. And his mentor introduced my dad to golf. And my dad, realizing how many networks he was making and people he was meeting and business deals that he was making on the golf
Yeah.
course, decided, I only have one child, and she is going to learn this sport because it's important. It's important for her network. It's important for life. It's important for progression in a career.
Yeah.
So at 5 years old, he took me to a golf course, and my love of golf started. So much of what we're going to talk about, I guess, in my golf story will relate back to these like formative experiences.
Mhm.
But as I grew up in the Caribbean, I then moved over to the UK. I originally wanted to get a golf scholarship and go to school in the States, but my parents, having never been to university, we didn't know how to navigate that process. We
Right.
didn't have the support, the resources, the understanding of what do universities want, what do they want to see, what do I need to present to them, and how do I sell myself to a university to be part of a golf team to get a golf scholarship to be able to afford to go to university in the States.
Right.
So with that, I ended up going to the UK because of my dad, have a British passport. And I went to school there and kind of gave up golf for a while.
Mm.
And I studied law, and I ended up studying law and practicing law for about 10 years.
Yeah. Wow.
So I first got called to the bar in the UK. Then I moved back to Antigua for a little while, got called to the bar in Antigua. Then I did my master's in the States at Georgetown, and then I moved back to Antigua again, and then worked as a lawyer for 6.5 years, moved back to the UK for 4 years working in law, and then I moved to Canada where my whole life changed. So the background to that is, or my background really is a background in childhood golf, turning to a legal career where I didn't have much time to play or practice or really be
Mhm.
into the sport. But I guess my life change came just before I moved to Canada, actually. During the pandemic, I was living in the UK again, and I was trapped at home on my own. And I was just going stir crazy, and my mental health was suffering. And I was like,
Mhm.
I need
Yeah.
a hobby. I need to get outside. What are things that I like? And I was like,
Right.
I used to like golf. Let's do this again. And I bought a set of clubs off the rack, and I went back on the course, and that's kind of how this all started.
Oh, I love that. Like I said, I heard you on a couple podcasts, so I just wanted to. And so I have a couple questions. I mean, because that's a lot to
There
unpack,
was a
and
lot there.
but
Sorry.
no, it's great because I love the journey and the story of like say from Antigua, the UK to the States, back to Antigua, back to UK, but from golf to being a lawyer, studying law, and then back to having that golf, that transition. So how would you say all the traveling you've done, and even probably today, how that have molded you to where you are today?
Yeah, that's a great question. So when I started playing golf again in the UK, remember my only experience in golf was in Antigua. I had played a
Mhm.
few tournaments when I was growing up in the US, but mainly in the Caribbean. So when I started it again in the UK, I looked around and I was like, whoa, nobody looks like who I grew up with play.
Yeah.
Nobody is, there. I couldn't find Black women. I couldn't find Caribbean women to connect
Yeah.
with. So I said, this is not the sport I know. And there almost was that feeling of, oh my God, do I even belong in this sport? And I've never had to ask myself that question before. Because in the Caribbean, everybody has a similar experience, similar background. It didn't feel as isolating.
Right.
So what I started doing when I started playing golf again in the UK was I started introducing Black women to the sport. So I created spaces for my friends and people in my network to try golf for the first time. And that was just before I moved to Canada. So I only did a few of those events. I found my community. I found out in the UK that there is, a 40-year long history of, for example, I'm trying to remember their name, the African Caribbean Golf Association, that has a
Mm-hmm.
robust membership that had carved, it's mainly a bunch of Caribbean men who used to play cricket, moved to the UK and started golfing, and they started creating spaces for themselves to golf together. I connected with them, the women in that group, and then in turn, I would also create spaces for Black women to play golf. Then I moved to Canada, and that's another story.
Yeah, no, no, yes. This is. I mean,
There's chapters.
there's chapters of your life. No, I mean, that's huge because you said the love of golf came from your dad, and just getting you acclimated to it at such a young age of a very difficult. It's a hard sport. On top of that, plus the culture of I want to get into that too, because I think you're the prime example of having to talk about the culture of golf in general, just being a Black woman. And I know on a past podcast you talked about representation
Mm.
and that how important that is to you. So, but we're gonna get into that in a little bit. As you said, now you lost. Did you lose your love of golf when you started studying law, or you just decided, this is not for me, but I want to try something different? So where did that come from? Did you lose your love for it, and how did you get the love back to getting back to golf?
That's a good question. I think it wasn't a loss of love, it was a loss of access. So in the
Okay.
US, you have a very strong collegiate culture of sport.
Right.
And it's kind of like that in the UK in some spaces, but for golf, it's not.
Right.
So I was in central London, and the courses are, first of all, you're a student in central London, it's already expensive. To
Yeah.
get to a golf course, you got to go on a train and pay for a membership somewhere. And I just didn't have the funding at the time. So it's both access and resources. As a student, I just didn't have the ability to independently fund myself to continue the sport at the
Okay.
time. Whereas
Right.
in the US, if I was in a college, there would probably be a golf team that I would have been able to join, but they don't have that in the UK in the same way.
Yeah, and you talked about a little bit of the mental health part of it too. Just saying, you just need something else to kind of escape and to get. And you said you got back into golf. Say, hey, why not try it again?
Yeah.
Now, for 10 years, you said study law for 10 years,
Well,
and
I studied law for, it was 3, 4, 5, 6 years,
six
and then
years. Right.
practice law for
Practice
10.
law, right? So you study law and practice law, became a
Yeah.
lawyer, a full-time lawyer, full official lawyer.
Yeah.
So, all right. So that on top of that, like I said, that's a journey in itself for those 10 years, 10 plus
Yeah.
years, and
And
getting
it
back to
just,
golf. Yeah.
there just wasn't the time. When you're
Mhm.
starting off in law, you're kind of, there's a saying of like cutting your teeth. You're just like in the trenches. You're
Yeah.
getting the work done. You're learning. There's a steep learning curve. Studying law, practicing law, two very different beasts.
Yeah.
And I think I got the study of law down in law school, but then as soon as you
Yeah.
get into the practice, you're like, what is this? For the first couple of years, even though I was living in Antigua and the golf course was accessible to me, I wasn't playing as much. I think I played a little bit. I was part of the Antigua golf team in 2013 when I first moved back, and I think we went to St. Kitts for a tournament, but I wasn't super serious about it. I kind of like dabbled, but I just didn't have the time to commit. So
Right.
when I did move back to the UK in 2019, the pandemic hit the year after, and that it was really the pandemic that catapulted me back into wanting to play the sport as opposed to it being there and maybe I do it sometimes. I just desired to be outside
Yeah.
playing.
Yeah, but that's a passion. Golf is a
Yes.
passion from when you started when you were young, and being able to now since you were 10 years, was it like kind of riding a bike? Was it more, putting that club in your hand and say, hey, I still got this. I can still do this.
Yeah, there was a little bit of that, you know. I feel like there's a coach that I know will say there's no such thing as muscle memory, and I hear him. I hear him, but there is
Yeah.
something to be said about the body remembering certain movements.
Mm,
You know, and I think there was so much when you're young and you're playing sport, you're not necessarily thinking about all the reps you're putting in. You're just
right.
doing it. You're showing. I remember growing up, I we would show up to the golf course every Saturday, 8 a.m. and we would go to our class, and then we would go on the course. And then after school, most days after school, I was on that course and I was training. My coach was like putting us through drills every day. So there are just inherently things that uh, you're putting in the reps for and not recognizing the outcome of that. And now when
Yeah.
I'm older and I picked up a club again, I was like, whoa, all that work really built up to me remembering certain things just physically that maybe I don't remember exactly how we got there, but we
Yeah.
still have it somehow.
Right, right, and that's just the skill set and the mental. Um, you as you said you got back into it, transition. It's like yeah, and maybe there was some muscle memory because like you said, the repetition, and I'm sure you got back to okay, now I'm getting back into this. I love this, and as you said, it's a passion
Yeah.
for what you missed with that too. And you brought up mental health, and let me give a couple shout outs. Like I said, we got comments in here. Nathan Ramasandra from the NR Hour Sports Show says, "What's up? Everyone,
Hello.
keep up the great work." And Mr. Ben Sutter himself, he is the creator of this network that I'm on. So definitely give him a shout out too. So, but you did have a
Nice to see
question
you.
here. He said, "Ask about your favorite moment." So I'm assuming your favorite moment in golf. I would assume so. I ask that. Yeah, what's your favorite moment?
That's a hard one. I feel like I have
Mhm.
a lot of different favorite moments. I'll give you a family moment, uh,
Okay,
a professional accomplishment in golf moment, and maybe one other. So
that's good. Yep.
my personal favorite moment is every Father's Day, my dad and I have like a grudge match.
Mm.
And even during the pandemic, we did it virtually where I played my course, he played his course, and then we like duked it out to see who got the lowest
Oh,
score.
that's cool.
So I love that moment as a
Yes.
personal piece. And I think my other favorite moment was probably the day I passed the playing ability test to join the PGA of Canada and officially be considered a golf pro. So
Yes.
that's definitely got to be another moment there.
Yeah, that's great. I think you said the mother or the daughter father you guys battle it out and have those moments. Now, who usually wins when you do that?
I let him win sometimes because it's not his Father's Day. So
uh,
we're gonna
I was
give
gonna
him some
say
wins sometimes.
I was gonna say might be careful with that one. So let's
You're walking in uncharted
yeah,
territory right
yes,
now.
yes.
This is
I don't want to. I don't want to cross
controversial.
cross that line. So you said it's Father's Day, so would you let him say, okay, have his moment? There's that controversial line. I'm not going to cross that at all. I don't want to have no dissension with that. So
You know what? He puts up a good fight.
okay,
He does put up a good fight, and to be honest, he's probably the only person that really gets in my head. So you know, he does a really good job at trying to win hands down, as opposed to
yeah.
me being like, "Yeah, you can take a win."
Right. You're like, no, I'm not gonna do that. So that's a favorite moment of yours. So you will leave it at that. So,
Yeah,
but good question. That was a really good question.
it
So,
was.
but the mental part of this and mental health and how important it is. And as you said, you went through saying, I'm going. I think a lot of people went through this during the pandemic too, just trying to find something creatively and things like that. Talk about how
Mhm.
important mental health is, and especially in the sport of golf, but on a professional level and you said on a personal level too.
Yeah, I think, you know, as you mentioned, the pandemic showed us how important being outside is.
Yeah.
When you're forced to be inside, you suddenly miss the outdoors. And I
Hmm.
really missed being the freedom of being able to walk, be
Yes.
outside, be open. So golf really gives you that escape where you're in nature for 4 hours walking. So
Right.
you're able to connect with people, you're able to like smell the fresh air, hear the birds chirping, see nature, and it's just that beautiful disconnect from the working world and your home and a beautiful connection with nature. And if you allow yourself to be present with yourself as well.
Right. Yeah, it is. It's very important because burnout can be it's a real thing. I went through that with the podcast. We were talking before we started recording how long I've been doing a podcast, and I had to kind of regroup, take a
Mhm.
year off from this, and but it's like you said with golf for you too. It's a passion. It's something you love to enjoy to do. So it does. You got because you said you're not your best if your mental is just a little. Even if you're mentally drained, you're not going to do your best on anything you do.
Yeah.
So I think even for like you said for you, it's just okay. It's the pandemic really did a number on a lot of us. And you said you want to get outside, you want to be with your friends, you want to be in nature, you want to be in all these things. And now we're finally out here again. It took a toll on us
Yeah.
mentally and physically.
Well, thank you for sharing that you
Mhm.
kind of went through burnout. We were talking just before, and I think we talked about the fact that people who we have to have 9 to 5 jobs to sustain ourselves.
Yes.
And it more often than not, we have a lot of side passion projects that we invest a lot of time additionally into. So
Mhm.
it's easy to burn out because we're so vested in paying the bills on the one hand, but
Right.
also pursuing our passions on the other. That takes up a lot of time, space, and energy in our lives, but that are important to us.
Yeah, very important. It is. You're right. And you said now we're outside. Yes, there are. It's still little pandemic. It still goes on. COVID still goes on, but it's not to the level it was 2, 3 years ago. Which I'm so glad about that.
Me too. Me too.
For sure, for sure. So talk about your journey and everything, which I thought was fascinating because you said from Antigua to the UK to the States to back to Antigua to the UK to Canada. Um, so where you are today.
Yeah.
But first, let's talk about. I want to talk about the culture of golf
Hmm.
and the barriers you had to. I heard you talk about this on a past podcast. Talk about the barriers that you've had, the challenges and the barriers that you had to overcome with that. Can you talk a little bit about that and also you said the culture in the UK and what it is in Canada and in the States.
Yeah, it's very different. So, uh, the immediate barrier is cost. So, golf
Yeah.
is expensive to access, and I know that there are ways to do it affordably, but to really fully, robustly participate once that golf bug bites you, it can be very expensive. So
Yeah.
that's definitely a barrier. When I was a student, that was a barrier. It's one of the reasons I gave it up for so long. Also, even during the pandemic, having to purchase new clubs, for example, was a cost that I had to bear, and I had to just do it if I wanted to get into the game again. So cost is for sure a barrier. The other was representation. So, I mentioned earlier when I started playing again in the UK, there weren't a lot of Black women in the space that I could find. So I
Yeah.
actively sought out Black women, and I was able to find a few that I was able to play with through the ACGA, the African Caribbean Golfers Association, which I was really grateful for. But my local golf course, I was the only Black woman. And actually, my local golf course and many of those around my vicinity in West London, where I was located.
Wow.
So seeing that lack of representation was the a huge barrier for me in really fully enjoying the sport because I felt like, oh, as I mentioned earlier, maybe I don't belong in this sport. And
Mm.
it's a weird feeling because growing up in Antigua, it was my sport. It is my sport. It's the only sport I do, the only sport
Right.
I know, the only sport I love. So to have that even that inkling that, hey, maybe this sport actually isn't for me is terrifying
Yeah.
because it's all I know.
Yeah. For sure.
So those are the two main barriers I think I can point to.
Yeah. Right. Right. And like you said, as we know, watching golf in general, and it is a white man sport, and
Mhm.
for the most part, we have you said you don't see many black women, especially in the states, playing golf. I mean, you have it, but on a professional level too. On top of
Well,
that,
you know what? I think when we think about professional golf as it is, the main two tours that the world knows, and there are other tours outside of the US, but the main tours, the PGA Tour and the LPGA Tour,
right?
and the PGA Tour have had very few Black men come through its ranks, and the LPGA Tour is the same. I think there's only been 8 African American women who have been on the LPGA Tour, and this is we're talking decades.
Decades,
Um,
yeah,
decades. So we've had time.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
but but I mean, golf has a history of exclusion. It's not a case of
Mm.
people haven't tried to break through. Until 1961, there was a clause that said that Black folks could not participate in the PGA Tour. It was a whites only, Caucasians only clause.
Right.
So there was active exclusion until 1961. And just because a clause comes off the books doesn't make it any easier for people to access based on cost barriers, representation barriers, support, racism that people would face. There
Yes.
was an African American tour in the US that Black folks would robustly participate in, and they were fantastic golfers on this tour. And eventually, after the Caucasians only clause was taken off the books, Black players did get into competing on the PGA Tour. But I feel like that history held us back for so long. I think it's really tough for people to still break through.
Yeah.
And when we look at how much it takes to turn pro, and my type of pro is a teaching pro, so this is very different, but how much it takes to be a playing professional, touring professional, it
Yeah.
takes so much money and resources. So unless you have that mobilized for you, unless brands and companies and people buy in, it's hard to sustain that chase to actually even get there, let alone once you get there, continue to compete.
Mm.
So it's a really tough grind.
It is a tough grind, and like you said, we could have another podcast of
Man,
time of having time, and us as blacks trying to make it into a lot of these where there is inclusion, there is barriers and things like that. Still, even to this day in 2024, for that, and on something like sport of golf, which I love watching, and as you said, you teach, you participate, you're a golfer in itself. I'm sure there's so much I'm sure you can actually share about the space of the struggles and things like that. But as you said, in Antigua, it was you in the UK, you're like, hey, this is what I know. But you come to the States, it's a little different. The culture's just a little bit different.
very different.
Even just watching and I've interviewed other golfers. I've interviewed other black women golfers who are just might be content creators of it, but they're taking it seriously to just get better at it each and every day to maybe one day become a pro golfer or at least on that level or close to it. But as you said, you got to have the resources, you got to have the brands, got to have people investing in it and everything too. So there's so much to so much to overcome. But you're a prime example. You're doing it because now you've created the black women golfers, and I want to talk about this. I want to have some time, talk a little bit of time to talk about this. Talk about what that is, and from the Instagram, you said it was building community and creating space to play and learn together,
Mhm.
established in 2022. So talk about why you started this, Black Women Golfers Canada, and what it's about.
Yeah, let me take a step back. I'm just going to go back to the UK for 2 seconds.
Yeah.
So in the UK, after I started playing golf, I saw that there was a lack of Black women. So I started introducing Black women to golf in the UK. I did a couple events in London before I moved. I
Yeah.
moved to Canada in 2022. And when I moved to Canada, I had not yet been called to the bar to practice law in Ontario. So when I was looking for jobs, I found this a job at Golf Canada that is a manager of a First Tee program in Ontario. First Tee is a big brand in the US where it introduces underrepresented kids to the sport of golf. Golf Canada had recently adopted the program here, and my move just happened to coincide with the program starting in Ontario, and I applied and got this job. So we'll talk about my 9 to 5 eventually. But because of my passion and my side project of getting Black women into the sport, it felt like a natural fit to move over and do this job at Golf Canada because all I'm doing is doing the same thing, but just in a
Yeah.
structured way with resources for kids. So it was a perfect transition over. However, my love of wanting to get more Black women in the space didn't die. So when I moved here, it was almost like deja vu. I had just restarted golf in the UK. I had just overcome these feelings of isolation because I wasn't seeing enough Black people in the space. So I started all over again. So what I did, researched who is in the space. And again, another golf league that had been in existence for 40 years. It's amazing how two different countries have two interesting, similar stories.
Yeah.
Caribbean men moved to Canada, were cricketers, decided to get into golf, and started playing golf together every week. This golf league called the Canadian Caribbean Amateur Golfers Association. I found them, I joined them, and I started meeting other Black women who play the sport. So everywhere I go, once I feel like there's no space or I don't see the women, I find them. I seek out
Yeah.
where they are, and I'm like, this is where my home is. So when I found this group, I started playing with them and started kind of getting my foundation. The UK was a country I traveled to and lived in before. I've had a baseline familiarity, so I didn't feel like I needed to take as much time, but I took about a year from 2022 when I moved to 2023 to really get the understanding of what Canada is about, what does the golf industry look like, what do the people look like, who are the players in the space, and then started connecting with the women that I met. We started off by meeting up after the golf season in simulators. So in the wintertime, people always ask, what do you do in the winter in Canada when it's snowing? How do you golf? We go indoors.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
there's now the rise of simulator golf. So we started off meeting up on a weekly basis in the indoor simulators in the off season. And then I decided to turn pro in 2023. And instead of just keeping it between us as women I'd met, I started actually opening it up to clinics for women to be introduced to golf. So we created Black Women Golfers. I put out a call by partnering with other Black organizations that work with women, getting them outdoors. So, for example, there's this wonderful group called Brown Girl Outdoor World, and they do outdoor experiences for Black women. They partner with organizations that create these experiences, and they filter the women through these incredible, like fishing and
Yeah.
ice climbing, ice cliff climbing, all kind of craziness. And we just so happened to partner with them to add golf to their roster. So we were able to start introducing from the very jump at 30 women at a time to golf during our clinics in year one, which was fantastic.
Yeah.
So it became finding a means to connect together and showcasing that we exist in the space to now introducing women to golf ourselves. And from year one, we hosted, I think, 3 or 4 clinics in year one. Now it's year two. And we've now introduced over 100 women to golf this year alone. And it's gone from introduction to golf clinics where you're just learning the fundamentals to range meetups where we meet up to practice to 9-hole learn to scramble events where we're teaching women how to navigate being on course in a scramble format. So it's just grown so beautifully because there is such a demand for this sport. There's such a demand within the community of Black women to know the fundamentals of this sport. And I'm just so happy that I have a group of women around me who are motivated in the same way to be able to create this space for other women.
I love that. I really do. The growth, the representation, as you said, is very important. And you said you seeked out you seeking out women of color, Black women of color, just to say, hey, I just want to have this program I'm putting together and want to try to you said be just representation education of it of that and the mental side of it, the physical side of it. You're just teaching. I just love that. And you said started from 30 to now 100 women, Black women golfers is tremendous to see. And it just keep building. I can hear the passion in your voice, and I can hear the passion in your voice, and I can hear the hard work you've done over the years. I mean, you said this has been it's like years in the making, but as you said, there are a lot of Black women that know this, that wants to participate, want to play, things like that, and I think this is a great outlet and a great program, safe space to have for Black women. So congratulations on
Thank
that
you.
success, on
I
that.
think I do want to highlight, I am inspired by a lot of Black women who already been doing the work.
Mhm.
So, in as much as I'm so passionate about what I do, I am not like an innovator in this space at all. This work has been going on. There are, you know what, one of my biggest inspirations has been Tiffany Fitzgerald of Black Girls Golf.
Mm.
She has been in this game for a long time, getting Black women into the game. And I'm inspired by the work that she does and other groups that are also creating spaces because number one, we shouldn't be doing this alone, and all the knowledge that we have and the
Yeah.
intimidation that we might have felt, we want to break that down and not have women experience the same way. We want women to show up and think, you know what? Black girls golf or Black women golfers or whatever Black group there is out there showed me where I show up to a golf course and check in, showed
Yeah.
me how to play a scramble, showed me how to hold a golf club, or gave me some tools to help navigate. So when they show up, they're not thinking, I'm so nervous. I don't know what to do. I don't know where to go.
Yeah.
And I just love that there's so many of us doing this work.
Yes. I mean, it's good. It's so great to see, and like I said, the progression, and as you said, it's come a long way. It's still work to be done, but just as you're being a part of this, a big part of this, and moving forward into many years to come, just seeing the growth of it as well. So you talked about your 9 to 5, as we said, having time to do a lot of these things. Uh, you know, our passion projects, as we call them, but talk about you said you're the manager of Golf Canada and things like that. Talk about that the balance of how you are being able to coordinate those things, if that's a word of balance.
No.
We know that it
I would
isn't.
say,
I never
what,
say it. I say that, say it's not a no, not a bad. We just do.
like what balance?
A
What balance
balance.
are we
Yeah.
talking about?
Yeah. What
What
is
I
that?
will say, what I will say is that, it's essentially my life. My 9 to 5 and what I do on the side are the same. I'm creating space and opportunity. One is just within, so Golf Canada is the national sport organization for golf in Canada. So they essentially are the governing body for the sport of golf in Canada. And the program, the First Tee program, I'm the manager for the Ontario chapter. So
Okay.
I am so lucky to be able to work with an incredible team to find where are the communities that are most underrepresented in this sport. We're talking Black children, Indigenous children, we're talking girls programs specifically, we're talking children with disabilities. We're looking at where the need is most, and we're trying to find ways to build trust with communities and for them to know, hey, it's okay when you see this free golf program over here to register your kids, because no, you don't need to teach them etiquette. No, you don't need to buy them clubs. You don't need to get shoes. You don't need to get them a golf shirt. They show up as they are, and we have this ready baked program for them to
Mm,
enjoy and have fun with.
yeah.
So, but that doesn't come easily. It doesn't, when you put up a free program for golf, people who are already plugged in about their children doing golf are going to come.
Yeah.
Maybe those aren't the kids we're looking for. We're looking for the parents who are like, no, 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 this isn't for our family because it's too expensive. And we're trying to say, no, 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 it is for you. And here's why. So my 9 to 5 is relationship building. It's building trust. It's talking to people about what their barriers are and hearing that and saying, how do I put our messaging across that allows you to understand that this isn't actually a barrier for you to access this program? How do I build that trust? So I love what I get to do as a 9 to 5. It's for kids specifically to access golf. I cannot wait to see the impact that this will have in years to come. This is a slow
Mhm.
burn. In the US, this program has been in existence since 1997. And for us, we only started in 2022. So
Right.
we have a long way to go.
Like, yeah.
But I know that this is going to have a huge impact on the golf industry in Canada. I'm really excited to see that.
Think that's the, like you said, that's the most important thing, is to the impact of what it's going to be with the slow grind, but the impact is always the most rewarding
Yeah.
for it all and everything.
And I'm going to
um
be old and gray when we see it.
yeah,
So excited.
yeah, it's excited to see that growth and everything too. So I just got a couple more before I let you go. I mean, I knew I could talk to you for a long time, but I'm not gonna keep it much longer. But we got to do this again. We for sure have to
I'd
do
love that.
another podcast. I'm really, I'm like I said, I enjoy just from afar, just connecting with you for the last couple of weeks. Just seeing the great work you're doing in this community. And it's he said representation, and it matters, and it matters especially in a space like golf and a sport like golf. So it's good to see. But I see that I saw, I think it was like last year, and you are Adidas on Adidas. Talk about that, how that all came about, being an Adidas athlete, and just in general, the sponsorship and how important that is.
Yeah, that's an interesting question. Okay, let me start off by saying I turned pro, and in this context, there's a golf professional versus a professional golfer. I'm a golf professional, which means I'm a coaching or teaching
Yeah,
professional.
right.
But I'm one of two Black women in all of Canada to be a
Mhm.
member of the PGA of Canada. So there's not many of us out here. And actually, the only other Black girl is like a mile away from me. She's a good friend of mine. So
So you
I
just
love that
connect
for
right
us.
with her. Yes.
Love that for us. Love to
Yes,
have a
yes.
community so close by. We definitely want to see more of us out here,
Yeah.
but grateful to have the opportunity to join. So I was connected to Adidas last year through a friend of mine who very graciously introduced me and, bigged me up and said like, hey, she's doing great things and, would love you to connect with her. And they did. And a couple months later, I was signed. And I think for me, what that means is, uh, I think a lot of brands buy into numbers, how many followers you have.
Yeah. Yep.
And I don't have a lot. I'm a smaller creator, and in as much as I'm a golf professional, I'm really still new to Canada. I'm new to this space. So what it means to me is that a brand is willing to buy into someone that's up and coming, someone who has potential, and someone who's really trying to make an impact, as opposed to the person with the most followers.
Mm.
And I just feel very grateful for their support. Whenever I have an event for Black women golfers, they send swag for all the women. Whenever I have something coming up, they're willing to support. So I'm really just grateful to be part of this ecosystem.
Yes, I mean it's great that you said they invested in you, and what you do, what you represent, and not just because of the numbers they represent. They seem like they invested in you for what you're doing, the work you're doing, and they said the followers will come, the followers will show, but as long as you said excited and passionate about what you're doing and put it in other people's lives, and you're making an impact in other people's lives. I think that's always the main thing. So I think that's great. But then to put that representation on that part too is good too. So
Yeah,
uh,
it feels
it's,
really good to say like I'm supported by, or
yes,
I'm
what
an
about you?
Adidas athlete. That's so cool.
Yeah,
So
that is cool. That's really cool. And you
yeah.
said, and it doesn't hurt to get that swag and have some Adidas swag and looking good in it too, right? And doing stuff
My
like
husband is about to toss half of this. There's so much stuff in my house right now. He's like, come on. You can get rid of
that.
one shoe, just one.
Be
Like,
like, I'm
no,
sorry. I mean, they're sending it. I can't. I'm not gonna
I
turn
can't
them
say
down.
no. I'm
No, I'm not
keeping
gonna
it.
turn it down. I gotta
I'm
keep.
keeping it.
I gotta represent
Right? They all
for,
have
for
their
for that.
functions. They all
Yes,
match a different outfit.
yes,
So
for
yeah, it's
sure,
really fun. It's been
for
really
sure.
fun.
All right, last one, and then I'll let you go. I wanted to ask you about advice for someone
Yeah.
that wants to, for one, get into golf first and foremost. Especially now, I'll talk about for black kids, young kids that want to get into golf, and they see they see someone like you said representing the culture, representing golf, representing just the authenticity of what you bring to. They want to get into the space. They want to be a coach. They want to be, even a content creator or just a golfer itself. What advice would you give them?
Just do it.
Mm,
Like I think there are different levels to this. If you're someone who is interested in getting into golf as a starting point, look for your local first tee program.
right.
First tee is so um there's so many first tee programs across the United States, and they're such accessible programs. I would say start there. Look for your local first tee program if you want to get your child into golf. It's a great place to start.
Yeah.
If you're a little bit older and maybe children's programming isn't for you, maybe you're aging out, you're maybe at university level, or you're an adult, go to a golf range. Just go ask for, make sure your local golf range has like rental clubs, and go and rent some clubs and try it. Try it with friends.
Yeah.
Like just go and try it and see how you feel. Another one I would say is for adults, find group lessons. If you're a woman, especially, find all women's group lessons. You can find a group of friends there, people who are trying golf for the first time, like you. If you feel intimidated to go by yourself, take another friend with you and just go have some fun.
Yeah.
As it relates to content creation, listen, it's the wild, wild west out here with content. You
Yes.
make your content, girl. You do what it is you want to do on these social
Hmm.
medias, okay?
Yep.
So I would always encourage people to just start with social. It's I don't know. I don't know if it's intimidating for people. I know it's a toxic place to be if you're there too long.
Yeah.
But do what works for you and make the content that makes you happy. Is where I'd say.
Yes, I think that I'd use the same advice, and people always ask about that same thing. How to get into podcasting? How to get into content creating? I'm like, just do it. Whatever you enjoy talking about, start it. Just
Yeah.
you could do off your phone. You could do it off like a laptop, whatever it is. Hit record, go on Instagram Live or whatever it is. Just you say anything, just do it because at the end of the day, it's what you are passionate about talking about or want to share, and you don't have to share everything. Just share 5-10 minutes of something. But as you said, it's all about just, and then you start to connecting, and then you start to network, and then you start to do all these things. Uh, Getting, it said, the followers, they'll come, they'll show up, because at the end of the day, someone, and they said, in these social media streets, everyone has a podcast. Everyone's a content creator. There's a lot of content creators. It's
There's
just,
so much content out
yeah,
there.
there's
Why
so much
can't it be you
content.
too?
Yeah, you're right. Why can't it be you too? Exactly, exactly. So, Amaya, this has been. I've really enjoyed this conversation, and this discussion, and so many nuggets, so many different things that, I mean, we could have went so many different directions, but for time, I said, let me just, I'll narrow it down a little bit. But I mean, we could have went so many different directions, but I really enjoyed this. I thank you again for the time. Thank you again for what you're doing, and so much more success for you. And wish you so much success and blessings moving forward into 2025. So let everyone know where they can find you on social media, and what you got upcoming, what you can announce, what you got upcoming in the next year.
Fantastic. So before I say where you can find me, I just want to say thank you, Courtney, for having me on. I learned a little bit about you today, and I just want to say I wish you all the best with
Thank you.
your ventures. I know how hard you've been grinding and how hard it is to balance the grind with your 9 to 5. And this is such a pleasure to be on this show, and I can't imagine what's going to come next for you based on the talent you have.
Thank you. I appreciate
Um,
that.
in terms of me, 2025, more growth for Black women golfers. Indoor simulator meetups and leagues are starting in February. So I'm super excited. And we've got a whole summer full of events popping up as well that will be on socials. To find me, you can find me at golf_interrupted on Instagram. You can also find me at Black Women Golfers, all one word. I couldn't believe the handle was available either. Trust me, on
Yeah.
Instagram as well. So follow me there. And thank you again for the opportunity to share my journey.
Yes, and thank you for sharing it with me on the podcast. Really appreciate it. And again, we have to do this again. Your podcast family now, so you're part of my real deal ecosystem, as I say. So I will reach out, and I'm glad that we've networked and connected on, especially on Instagram as well, because I know that's a lot of where I found you on Instagram, YouTube, and things like that too. So again, I really appreciate it, and I'll share this with you on once it's edited, probably later today or tomorrow. Like I said, that time, I was at that time. So, but it'll definitely be up by at least by tomorrow, the whole entire podcast. So again, everyone, thank you for tuning in. Thank you for the question, and who tuned in. And until next time, everyone be safe and God bless.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.